Welcome into Starting Five. You're on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. Now that my voice is a little better, we'll start getting back to doing more of these. Thanks to our producer, Manny Chang. Also, thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders, our friend Danny and his team, which is his family. It's a family owned business. Hurricane season is still ongoing. You never know when that storm's going to come. So make sure you reach out to All Pro Construction Builders. Quality is their specialty, based in Miami. They service Broward County and Monroe counties as well. They can do all the storm windows and storm doors for you. Mention Five Reasons. You'll get a 10% discount. But additionally, get those renovations done. We know 8% mortgage rates. Hard to find a house right now. So just make your house look better, right? And more livable. So reach out to our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. You can get Danny at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. Again, that's All Pro Construction Builders or allproconstructionbuilders.com. All right, let's get to it. The news hit in the middle of the night, the Woj bomb. James Harden has been traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. And so here we go again. And I'm going to try to, first thing, evaluate the trade from the Philadelphia perspective. I don't think most people care about the Clipper perspective here in Miami. But then, of course, there is the Miami fallout. And so I will try to address that as well. The team, by the way, is 1-3. Check out our episode from last night. Furious comeback with Tyler Hero and the bench. No Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler, I'm not sure if he played. It didn't seem like it. We addressed that in the podcast as well. We'll continue to churn out the podcast. We hope you continue to listen, even as this gets more frustrating. And 1-3 is kind of what I was afraid of in the 4-game start, and that's where they are. And there are a lot of issues that they need to work through. And we can get to more of those as we go forward here in the episode. But let's deal with the Harden thing. He, unlike Dame Lillard, got what he wanted. He got traded to the team he wanted to go to, the Los Angeles Clippers. And he didn't really even cause quite the Harden fuss that we were expecting, but it was enough for Daryl Morey to move him. So ultimately, the Clippers get him without having to trade the piece they didn't want to deal, which was Terrence Mann. But they do essentially get Philadelphia package that was better than what Miami would have been able to or willing to offer. And that's the context that needs to be thrown in here. Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, it's essentially at this point, it's roster filler. But then additionally, it's 2 first-round picks plus second-round picks plus pick swaps, which I never know the value of a pick swap. But anyway, the only way that the Heat could have actually gotten there, I think, would have been trading Tyler Hero. Like we talked about various trade possibilities that you could have traded Caleb. If you're not going to re-sign him, we haven't even really seen Caleb much this season because of the injury he's dealing with. You could have traded Caleb and Lowry, and you could have gotten Harden if you added a first-round pick, but it sounds like they wanted 2 first-round picks. And if you had taken Tucker back, who, of course, he goes in the trade now to the Clippers as well, then you could have done it for Duncan and Lowry. But then again, you probably would have needed to get 2 first-round picks, and Philadelphia got more than that, actually, as it turned out. So the only way you're going to beat it was by trading Tyler, and that's always going to be the debate that we have, is whether or not it's worth trading Tyler. I made the case, and I'll continue to make the case, that it was not worth trading Tyler Hero for James Harden. In the last year of his contract, whatever my feelings are about James, I was okay with them making a deal for him if it was essentially going to cost you Lowry's expiring and a first-round pick. And then you make a decision on the extension, and I would have been against an extension for James Harden. But it never really was going to get there because, first thing, I don't think Morey was going to trade him to the Heat willingly anyway, unless he had nothing else going on out there. And then, I'm not trading Tyler for a guy that's going to expire after this year and has proven that he's going to ask out of pretty much every situation unless he gets absolutely everything he wants, and is one of the worst playoff performers among stars in NBA history. And I've said that repeatedly. The numbers back it up. He's had essentially one really memorable positive series, but every other time he's gotten into a critical game, a game 7, he's flopped. He has more than 25% of the time in the playoffs, he shoots 25% or worse. I mean, to compare that to Wade, and I think it happened to Wade like 7 or 8 times over his entire career. Like Harden's done it like 26 times in fewer playoff games. He is not somebody you can trust. Now, with all of that being said, okay, I'm not blind to the issues with Heat. I'm not blind to the fact that he would have been an upgrade over Lowry. I'm not blind to this sort of lack of offensive juice with this group. And honestly, lack of fire among some like Jimmy, which is, I'm not at the concerned stage yet, but he didn't play in the preseason because of the dental procedure. I thought he was a C plus against Detroit in the season opener. He was a D against Boston by his standards, and I thought that was a game he would get up for, and they win that game if he plays better. Then sits out against Minnesota, comes back and floated yesterday in another game that if he's going to get up for anything in the regular season, you would figure it would be in Boston and in Milwaukee. And we haven't seen the good Jimmy yet. And I'm not saying he's cooked. That's crazy. I understand that he ramps up. Okay. I don't think it's because he's pissed about the players he has around him, but there does seem to be a usage transition here, which we telegraphed from Jimmy to Tyler, and it looks clunky right now. And nobody can blame Tyler for last night. He had 35 points, and this whole thing that I kind of started about, well, when he plays well, they don't win. That's not the case from last night. Like if he doesn't play well, they lose by 40. Okay, so but there does need to be some kind of a connection on the court between essentially your two primary scorers, and I'm not seeing that. They don't pass to each other a lot. They operate differently. Tyler kind of needs the ball in his hands to find his spots. Jimmy needs to slow the game down at times so that he can get to the line, hunt mismatches, and all of that. And they just don't look collaborative. They look like they're taking turns. And generally the offense just looks off. Now, I think it will help to get some of these pieces back, but a lot of the pieces they're missing are more defensive centric. That's where it really seems to be hurting them. With no Highsmith, Richardson just coming back last night, Martin only playing once, not playing well, and then sitting out after that, and now Bam's situation. So you're talking about 4 of your best defenders plus Jimmy missing that game, and you're out there playing guys who are just overmatched. I mean, last night you've got Love or Orlando Robinson trying to guard Giannis. Like that's not the plan. Like it's supposed to be Bam. Even guarding up with Highsmith, like there are other options you could go to with the fully healthy roster. They don't have it. And at the same time, I'm not going to sit there, and I said this in the podcast last night, and the whole season say, well, if they can just get healthy. We've done that before, and certain seasons you just never get healthy. Now, their supposed advantage is their depth. But it's one thing to be missing 1 or 2 guys and be able to plug something in. And it's another thing to be missing a star level player like a Bam and a Jimmy. And then additionally, you're missing 3 other rotation pieces. And they can't survive that. No team can really survive that. But I'm not going to continue to use as an excuse too long because, you know, because again, there have been certain seasons that they just never get right. Like I go back to the 2014-15 season, which no one really remembers because it was a post-LeBron season. But the whole year, all they talked about was if we can get our starting lineup healthy. I think their starting lineup played 7 minutes together or something like that the entire season. Like there are just some years you don't get healthy, and I do think it's a concern that they always seem to come out of camp with 3 or 4 nagging things that linger, and it goes day to day or beyond. And so, again, the injuries, it's a reason. To a certain degree, it can be an excuse for some of the choppy play, particularly on the defensive end. But there are real concerns with this roster, I think. And, it starts with the fact that they're not going to get high-level point guard play this year. We know that. The best they can hope for is adequate. And, if Lowry is, and at times in certain games he's tried more of this, but if he's not going to be a scoring threat, you're playing 4-on-5 out there. Drew Smith is not ready to play in an NBA rotation on a consistent basis. Whatever you think of him, I think that's kind of a universal opinion, maybe with everybody but Spoelstra. But I think that's even an opinion inside the Heat front office. But you had to. Now, with Josh coming back, Drew didn't play yesterday. And Josh did some good things, some Josh things, and Josh also did some things that made it look like he hasn't really played with this group. Like there were a lot of times that he and Duncan were in the same spots on the floor. That's not really supposed to be happening. And Josh is a guy who he likes to get to certain spots He'll shoot that little push runner. We have to see how that fits with everybody else. I liked the Hero Richardson pairing late in the game. That's kind of what helped bring them back, along with Jovic getting some minutes there, and then Orlando Robinson did some good things and some bad things, and they made the run there with Duncan out there as well, making a big three. So I want to see Hero and Richardson more together. That was the plan. We didn't see it a lot in the preseason, and maybe that will help. But going back to Harden on all of this, okay, I understand with the team 1-3, with the point guard situation, what it is, that if Harden plays well with the Clippers, we're going to hear a lot of, okay, the Heat missed out on another one. There are, with this one, as with all the others, extenuating circumstances. In this case, it wasn't, I don't think, necessarily that Morey wouldn't pick up the phone. It's, again, he ended up getting more than the Heat would have offered without giving up Hero, and should have offered without giving up Hero. And there is the issue not just of James's attitude, but also there's the issue of the contract after this season, where I don't think he's going to be satisfied unless he thinks he's getting paid. Now, we'll see if the Clippers actually go ahead with that. Question for Brohab comes in, and he's a regular on playback with us, so we appreciate it. Do you think this moves the needle for the Clippers? Modestly. I think what moves the needle for the Clippers is Kawhi and Paul George continuing to stay healthy. The Clippers didn't give up anything in this trade that they really needed. Some depth veteran pieces who some of them were not playing a lot anyway. We know Covington, Marcus Morris kind of been in and out of the rotation over the past couple of years. They did keep Terrence Mann, who's a useful piece. I think they're overvaluing him because of one playoff series, but it is what it is. But look, they'll be competitive in the Western Conference if those two guys are healthy. I mean, that's where that's at. The West, you look at Denver, they're just plugging in guys at this point. Like they have a system. They've got some interesting young players, and they're still going to be up there. Memphis, the loss of Morant was one thing. The loss of Steven Adams to me is a bigger deal because he's not coming back. So I'd move them down a little bit. The Lakers, I don't know what level LeBron and AD are going to be playing at consistently over the course of the season, or if they're going to be in there to be able to sustain a top 4 position. And, you look at some of the other teams, I think some of them are really talented, but maybe not ready yet. New Orleans is one of those that I would put in that category. OKC's talent level is extremely high. It's just a question of kind of when they hit it and maybe when they make some kind of consolidation of youth trade to add some veterans there to help in the mix. But I think the Clippers can be a top 4 team if Paul George and Kawhi are healthy. Now, how does Harden help with it? Well, first thing, he's played with Russ before, so that shouldn't be real hard. It's kind of weird to see the two of them together again. But I think, for him, it's just not being relied upon. Like, and that's the thing. You can't count on him in a playoff series. You can kind of count on Paul George, but again, if Paul George is going to be playing, and Kawhi, you can certainly count on if he's going to be playing. He's one of the great playoff performers of his generation. He's kind of the opposite of Harden and DeRozan in that his play gets better in the postseason, but he actually has to play in the postseason for that to be the case. So, and that comes in here, and I agree with it. They still can't stop Jokic. They don't really have answers inside for that. And I think a lot of this, like what we're doing here with these pieces moving around the league, we saw with Dame last night, is that we're talking about, and Miles hits on it here, we're talking about all of these other pieces, right? These star names that are being added to try to kind of, it's an arms race, right? Essentially, right? To try to get a third guy who can give you consistent scoring, okay? Build these 3-man teams up again, right? And then, you patch it up with some role guys. But all of this may be moot if Jokic is just this much better than everybody else. And that looks like the case because they have developed, and I know Mike Malone rubs some people the wrong way, but like they've developed a system around Jokic where they don't need like 12 great rotation players. They just need 8 total guys. That's it. Their starting lineup is complete. It's balanced. It has defensive pieces like KCP. Porter is streaky, but that there will be nights that he can carry you offensively. I'm a huge Murray fan, and look, Gordon is perfect in this role. He wasn't perfect in the Orlando role. So the starting lineup is there. Reggie Jackson's actually been giving them some decent bench minutes. They just need a couple of these young guys to, Christian Braun's one, Watson's another, just to kind of fit in with the Jokic flow because he's going to make everybody else better. I think that's where we're at. Like he is the Pat Mahomes of the NBA right now. Like it's, and I guess Mahomes wasn't great this past week, and he struggled with it at times when he really doesn't have a lot of receiving talent there. But typically a guy, and Brady was like this for a while too until he fell off, where if you can pretty much put anybody around them and they're going to make that guy better. Steve Nash was like this with Phoenix, where anybody could run. I mean, Sean Marion was a premium, break runner and all the rest of that stuff, a borderline Hall of Famer. But he made a lot of guys look good in that system. This comes in from Aaron. DeRozan possibility says there's no more whales out there. I mean, possibly. Chicago's worth watching, whether it's for Levine or for DeRozan. That is a bad mix there. Their top end is probably a 7 seed at best because they just have guys who occupy in the same spots on the floor. DeRozan's not a proven playoff performer. He's one of those guys who falls off in the postseason. He does have a relationship with Jimmy. But again, are we trading, and I say we as in the Heat, like, are they trading Hero for any of this, or can they get it done without? And that's going to be this question all along. I mean, look, Tyler, I was told, okay, by high up officials at the Heat, and you can believe them or not believe them, but I'm just passing on what I was told, that one of the things that frustrated them the most, again, was this idea that they couldn't get anything for Tyler and they had to attach picks to Tyler and all that. When they told me they had 2 offers at minimum of multiple first-round picks and a player for Tyler. Now, I don't know which teams. They wouldn't tell me. But I was essentially told that they were told not to tell Portland about it because those teams didn't want to devalue their own assets. I don't know what Tyler's value is around the league. 2 first-round picks and a rotation player sounds high to me, but 1 first-round pick and a rotation player does not. Sounds about right. And so could you get something for Tyler? Yes. Should you trade Tyler for an aging player who's not going to move the needle that much? My point has always been no. I think if you actually had the opportunity and it was all it took, would I have traded him for Mitchell? Yes. Would I have traded him for Beal in that situation? Probably no. Would I have traded him Durant? Yes. Would I have traded him for Dame? Yes. But we're going to keep having these conversations as the team teeters here. And Wednesday is a big game for this team, I think, early in the season. Like, Brooklyn's playing well. They've had problems with this incarnation of the Brooklyn team. They lost twice to them. Last year, they were critical losses that dropped them to the play-in because Mikal Bridges went nuts on them after the Durant trade. This thing could go sour pretty quickly. Like, I've talked about, slow starts, and they've made an impact even after slow starts. And this is a franchise that's gone to the finals after starting 9-8, won the championship after starting 20-19, started 27-23 in the year that Bosh got sick. When he went out, they ended up playing better without him in the second half of the season. Spo tends to be, even 11-30 to 41-41. Spo tends to be a March coach. Like, that's when everything kind of clicks. But there are other issues, behind the scenes here. And, just in terms of the disappointments of the offseason that I didn't think were going to be a big deal. And I don't think we're seeing it be a big deal with Tyler specifically. But I do think that if they continue to flounder early, that what happens with that is some of these guys that are injured a little bit end up staying out a little longer. We see this with mediocre teams all the time. They can't put themselves in that position. They have to get off. I said I was hoping for, an 8-4, 7-5 start. They've got to, they got to beat the Nets on Wednesday. They got to win these games at home. That they have to. And then this comes in from Vive, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Vive, maybe. Remember when everyone was saying Lowry's contract was going to be an asset as an expiring? LOL, this team is so mid. I still think it can be an asset as an expiring as you get closer to the trade deadline. Will the Heat pull the trigger on something that marginally improves them? And that's where I want to close here, okay? That becomes the next issue. Whereas you make certain moves, or you should make certain moves, as we've been saying, if you think you have a chance to win. But then it becomes self-fulfilling. If you don't make the moves and the team is mediocre, struggling, it's justification for the front office to then say, well, okay, is it really worth, going into the second apron? Or is it really worth, spending this much on the tax? Or is it really worth giving up a significant asset? Okay, so it's not just money, it's the other stuff too. Is it really worth that to move up from an 8 seed to a 7 seed? And that's the kind of conversations you don't want the front office to have in January or February when we're talking about Lowry's contract. So for that part, at least, it's on the players and the team not to put the front office in that position. And we can say that the front office put the players in this position. That's again an argument that we've sort of bandied about a lot here over the past couple of months. But now it's on the players. Like the guys who are on the floor, like a lot of them, wanted to be here, didn't want to be packaged somewhere else. As they start to get healthy, this team's going to have to find some kind of rhythm, something they hang their hat on. I still think it's going to be defense. Again, I look at the, Highsmith being out, Caleb being out, Bam now being out, Josh was out. If you get all of those guys playing defensively, Spo has enough options to make things really hard on other teams. The offense, Jimmy and Tyler need to get on the same page, I think. They got to find a way to make each other better. Bam and Tyler do. Bam and Jimmy, not as much. We've talked about the lack of passing there at times, but statistically, it always ends up pretty good with their offensive rating when the two of them are out there together. Tyler and Jimmy, there can be a passing of the torch here, but it can't be a tossing of the torch and running to the corner. That's not going to help this team. All right. Thanks to Manny for producing today. Thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders and allproconstructionbuilders.com. James Harden is a Clipper. So we know what Twitter is going to look like today. You'll feel better when he's 3 of 18 in a game 7 of the first round. Okay. That's all I'll say. Have a good day, everybody.